Okay, we probably are live. Okay, just to be sure. Yep. Are we live?
Yes, we are. Good morning,
Okay.
good afternoon, good evening to our viewers, whichever part of the world you might be from. My name is Ram. I am a developer advocate at the Cloud Foundry Foundation. Thank you for joining our live stream today. As you might have picked up from the title of the stream, we're going to do a little bit of digging into JavaScript applications today. And we're going to take a look at how they can be containerized, how to use them with Docker, how to deploy them to Kubernetes, at least talk a little bit about it, and then take a deep dive into how you can accomplish all of these different things with a single step with the Cloud Foundry Pass. So also on the stream today is Shedrack. Shedrack is also a developer advocate at the Cloud Foundry Foundation. Shedrack joins us from Nigeria, which is his hometown, Lagos.
Yeah.
Why don't you just introduce yourself, Shedrack?
Yeah, sure. Hey everybody, my name is Shedrack Akintayo. I'm also a developer advocate at the Cloud Foundry Foundation, just like Ram has said. And today we are bringing to you live deploying and simplifying JavaScript apps on Kubernetes with Cloud Foundry. I've been doing JavaScript for a while, even before I shifted to or I moved to the cloud native side of things. And there's so many benefits that Cloud Foundry brings to the table when it comes to deploying JavaScript apps on Kubernetes. There's so many out of the box things that you do not need to do by yourself, unlike when you have to deploy stuff to Kubernetes by yourself without Cloud Foundry. So today we are going to be highlighting these things. We're going to be comparing and contrasting in a friendly manner, and also show some
Hopefully
live,
friendly manner.
hopefully friendly manner, and show some action in some Cloud Foundry action live and direct. So Ram, can you take over and let's get started?
Sure. So I wanted to first spend a couple of minutes giving folks the background about why we picked JavaScript today. JavaScript is actually one of the most popular languages that Cloud Foundry users have been using in the past. If you have happened to catch our survey that we did recently, one of the questions that the respondents um, had was, what languages are you using with Cloud Foundry? And JavaScript actually came at number two in a list of about, let's say, the 10 most popular languages that also had like Java, Python, Go, Ruby, and so many others, .NET, PHP, C Sharp, C++, etc. There was also a significant number of people who said they use TypeScript. So together, it's like a big chunk of our total survey respondents. And the reason we didn't go with Java at number one was there's a lot of information that folks already have about Java and Cloud Foundry. We, as a foundation and as a team, are also interested in exploring a little more, in fact, a lot more about what Cloud Foundry can do to JavaScript users. Now, one of the things that I've personally experienced is that a lot of JavaScript engineers don't, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but they haven't generally kept up with a lot of the changes that have been happening in the infrastructure world. They have a very why do I care sort of attitude when it comes to containerization and Kubernetes and things like that. They're very happy to just write their code, hand it off to another service, or just check it in and have other operators take it over and things like that. Of course, they're very happy and very eager to receive feedback in terms of how my code is performing. Is it fast? Um, is it optimized and things like that. But when it comes to operating it and making sure it runs on like different infrastructure and keeping up with like, oh, there's a new sort of infrastructure in town, is my code capable of running on that? Is it compliant with all those standards? I found that they prefer conversations about the former and not quite the latter. So I mean, that's not to discount a lot of developer teams who've already taken the effort to containerize their applications and make use of Kubernetes and deploy these JavaScript apps to Kubernetes. But really, the goal is to simplify this workflow for a majority of the JavaScript developers. Why majority? All of the JavaScript developers, let's say. That's a that's a greedy sort of wish that I have. So yeah, you know, and I guess the biggest reason why we picked JavaScript over all others is because Shedrack is a front-end developer himself and our resident JavaScript expert. So that is another reason why we picked JavaScript.
Disclaimer: I'm not an expert, please.
Well,
Just
let's
putting that
say
disclaimer
that
out there.
on the two people speaking on this call, you are comparatively the expert.
Okay, I'll take credit for that too. I'll
Yeah.
take that credit. Yeah, sure. Like Rama said, well, developers like JavaScript developers mostly like to focus on not just JavaScript developers in general. We mostly like to focus on development. We don't want anything else taking our time. We just want to write code, push ship code, etc. So now JavaScript developers are like on literally the other end of the web application stack compared to containers, Kubernetes, and infrastructure. We sort of don't care. Like we just want to write our code, deploy, push our code, and let the DevOps people do the rest of the whole deployment and infrastructure thing. We don't want to worry about that. Now there are too many moving parts when it comes to platform operations that JavaScript developers like us just wouldn't like to focus on. We don't care about it. I mean, for the most part, I don't want to say talk about everybody. So when we talk about Docker files, pods, nodes, YAML, replica sets, and other things, we tend to alienate JS developers. I mean, it's not intentional. It's just that we've just seen that JS developers really don't care about these things. So as a result, the JavaScript community has rallied around technologies such as Netlify, Vessel, which allow rapid development of applications. So I mean, if you have been doing JavaScript for a while and you need like a fast method to deploy your app and see it go live, we always go for Netlify or we go for Vessel. I mean, they are awesome technology, help us deploy stuff as fast as possible. We see our changes live, connect through Git, push your code to Git. You see, and automatically a job starts and you see your application live on Netlify. Fantastic stuff. Now, it's basically help us ship code fast without knowing about, we don't having to know about any of the internal operations or implementation when it comes to deploying stuff. Now, this particular abstraction, it's very, very crucial in getting the JavaScript community to adopt or adapt to changing infrastructure and platforms. So I'll just like Ram to quickly give us a short comparison with doing all this the operational part of things with Netlify and Vessel. Ram, the ball is in your court.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that you mention like Netlify and Vercel and all of these other tools that I keep hearing about, and I'm sure it's the rage in the JS hipster community. But here's what I want to understand: the workflow that you're going towards is you have your application source code, and then one of these tools comes in They take your source, they build something out of it. What it is unnecessary, right? They build something out of it, and then they deploy that code somewhere, right? And this somewhere, you're not very particular about understanding what this somewhere is. um, so the important focus for you is the source itself. um, and then you're very app aware in terms of, okay, this is my final application, this is what it does. But you do not want to be platform aware, you do not want to be infrastructure aware. You are, as a JavaScript developer, you would like to see that speed, and you would like your to see your code move through all of these stages, what have you. And then you want it deployed at like a target instance. So that's really the workflow, if I understand things correctly.
Yeah. Sure. Definitely. That's definitely the workflow.
Right. And then, generally speaking, you want this path to be one that has, like zero friction, minimal friction for practical purposes. And then, do you know if like Netlify containerizes your apps? Do you know if like if it can run on Kubernetes, or if it is running on Kubernetes, or is it all VMs underneath, or is it like, I don't know, 10 turtles that are just down there holding your apps up on the shelves of their pack? So is that visibility something that you as a JavaScript developer find important, or is that something like, I don't care, or as long as it gets deployed, I'm happy? What's your feel? And so let's answer this question in two parts, right? What is your feel as an individual JavaScript developer? And then, what do others in the community, say or react to, or would think of, in if the same question was asked to them?
Yeah, so basically, I really personally, I really do not, I've not bothered myself to think about how these things work underneath. I just want to deploy my application, right? And see it go live when I click on the button or when I drag and drop into it. And I think it's the same way for most of people in the community. I mean, we really don't bother about how these things work underneath. Only if you are maybe using, maybe you're just curious enough to just know about these particular things. But in general, most of us don't really care about this. We just want to see our application go live, and yeah, that's basically it. Now, tools like, let me just quickly enumerate like the advantages that tools like Vercel, Netlify brings to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a very big fan of Netlify. I mean, most anything I build basically goes out in Netlify first. So tools like Netlify and Vercel, first things first, we want to ship code and deploy our code fast. They help us do that as fast as possible. All you just need to do is connect it to your GitHub repo, and you git push, and automatically it starts a job that push your application, your code directly to the production. You can also do things like creating various branches for different parts of your code. If you want to deploy, if you have a branch called development, you have a branch called production, etc. You basically can switch between branches and see your the changes reflect live. If you want to add a DNS, if you want to add, there's so many things that you can really do. If you want to add a DNS, you want to add a domain name, which will join Netlify to the app that you've deployed on Netlify, and they give you very quick access. Now, the most mind-blowing part of it is the fact that you can do most of these things with buttons. Like, there are buttons on the
Oh.
dashboard. You click on this, yeah, you can just add a DNS as fast as possible. Deploy your application will be just clicking on a button, etc. So it's really great. Now, one other cool part of Netlify is you can literally just drag and drop. You can drag and drop your application folder into Netlify dashboard, and it deploys it live. Fantastic technology. Now, basically, these things are fun. It's awesome, right? But don't you think there should be a better way to do this? I mean, just a single command and see stuff get deployed live. Now, this is basically what Cloud Foundry is offering. They're offering a um, a one command deploy for your application on Kubernetes. You do not need to know how Kubernetes works. You do not need to have a CKA or a CKAD certification to be able to use Cloud Foundry to deploy your application on Kubernetes. All you just need to do to push your application live is a single command. Now, let's switch to some demos to show this Cloud Foundry in action and talk about things while we are deploying applications. So for the first part of it, Ram is just going to show us the basics of a Docker file in an Hello World app. So Ram probably should share your screen and go over the, can you see my screen routine?
So, can you see my screen, Shedrack?
Yes, I can see your screen.
I think the world is sick of these 5 words. So, um, yeah, let's start off with like um, a basic containerization exercise, right? I'm just going to I hate to pick on like Docker or Docker files or say that they're bad or ugly or very cumbersome and they get very difficult to compose and maintain as your app grows in complexity or scale or whatever. But all of that is true. So, but like tons of developers out there have probably deployed using Docker like 1,000 times, right? So
Yep.
I like to start off any discussion about deploying containerized JavaScript apps by discussing this tiny hello world Docker file, like I would call it. I mean, it's not technically a hello world thing, but it is a hello world sort of grade in terms of Docker files and as far as like um, containerizing JavaScript apps go. So basically, you um, pick like what is known as the base. In this case, a particular version of Node, and then you compose these steps in terms of different commands that Docker would run inside like a um, let's say a Linux machine or a Linux OS, and you basically instruct how to create a JavaScript container to this application that you have. So in my source folder, along with my application source, this Docker file will reside, and then it will just run and it will take all the source that it resides along with and package it into what is known as a container. One of the most common forms of which is a Docker container, right? And that's basically what what we are looking at here. So the there is the base image, and we define a working application directory, and then we copy package a JSON into that directory, and then we run the most favorite command of the JavaScript world, which is npm install, to run that run the npm install command and install the application. And then we copy this app that has been built along with all of its source, and then we run the second favorite command of the JavaScript world, and then the app basically starts, and then we expose like whatever port that we need this app to go out from. So this is like a basic composition of a Docker file that will help run a very simple JavaScript app.
Well, that's basically the hello world of Docker files as composed by Ram. So, I mean, so this is like, I think this is 7 lines of stress, if you ask me. I mean, there's so
To
many
begin
things
with,
going on.
to
Yeah.
begin with, I mean,
Um,
the command that builds your actual container is a docker build command. Okay, and that docker build command is basically, going to use this docker file, and then it's going to build that container for you, and then you basically run that container using a docker run command. So, but then, you need this docker file before you can get into like a docker build.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so there's so many moving parts. I mean, first things first, we need to get Node. So from Node, then we also need to also copy our package.json, also copy our app folder, then run npm install, then copy the app folder, then run the command node index.js, then expose the port 3000 for us to be able to see our app. This is like the most basic form of writing a Docker file, which I still feel like is stressful.
I mean,
So
it does have its downsides. So a
yeah,
lot of stuff is hard coded. Let's say you wanted to run npm CI instead of npm install. That's not going to happen. Let's say you want to reuse some of the layers, or you want to alter certain parts of the base image and not certain other parts of the base image and things like that. That's not going to happen. um, Stuff like that. So if you decide to, let's say, change your entry point script into server.js instead of index.js, guess what, that's not going to work. So there
definitely.
are, yeah, there are a few places that this can trip you up, like few very basic places. There's a whole lot of other issues that do come from running JavaScript apps exclusively using Docker files. And then there are other best practices as well about users and permissions and security, so on and so forth. So I agree that there can be a better way, right? And
Yeah,
that sort of brings us to the first thing which we will demo today, and that is something known as uh, Pax CLI. So, um, just a little bit of background. Um there is what is known as buildpacks.io, which is a service, sorry, which is a project that is part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Um, they they basically define a simple and straightforward means for developers to containerize their applications as long as they have a source code. So this is the first step in that three-step process that we spoke about, in terms of here's my source code, there's my infrastructure where there's the endpoint where it has to run. Now go run it. So the first step is to create a JavaScript container of sorts from the source that was given, and then use that JavaScript container to be deployed onto Kubernetes and fulfill that entire experience. So build packs are the piece that are very critical to providing that experience. Um, in the wild, build packs have existed for about 10 years now. They were pioneered by the team at Heroku, and then they were given a lot of um, life by the team at Pivotal, which basically is the Cloud Foundry team in a sense. And so Heroku and Pivotal developed their sort of own different, put their own spin on these build packs and things like that. And much later, like a couple of years ago, they both converged once again to define what are known as the cloud native build pack. So together they define the OCI image standard and build packs in general, and that is what we will be using today. So what I'm going to do is I am going to quickly check out some code that, do you have like a hello world somewhere? Maybe we can find like a hello world. somewhere, right? Let's see.
So if you can't find it, probably should use the one on the Cloud Foundry samples.
Yeah, that's a good.
Okay, so this one is John. Okay, this is by John Papa.
Is that a famous
If
person?
this, yeah, I think it's the developer advocate or something. I can't really remember, but I know he's popular.
Okay, I'll believe you if this runs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use pack to build a container. The command is pack build. And then I'm going to give this like a long name. And then I'm going to specify the build pack that is going to be used. And then I'm going to specify a builder. Now, obviously, like lots of new words, lots of new terms, but let me just try to break this down a little bit. Okay. So again, pack is the command that is going to help us build our containers. Build is the instruction. All right. Hello world node.js is the name of the container that we're going to be using. Not a very creative name, I'll admit, but it's something. And then build packs is what we've been speaking about for so long. They're hosted on Google's container registry, and Paketo is an implementation of the cloud native build pack specification that we just saw at buildpacks.io. They're open source. Folks are free to contribute to Paketo build packs if they're interested. And we're going to be using the Node.js build pack, obviously. And then, like the builder that I'm going to be using is Paketo Builder base, which is like a base image. Now, um, excuse me. Yeah, that should help build my index, right? Uh, Obviously, in every demo, this should happen, right? um,
Yeah, pretty much.
so let's see. If I don't specify one, um, pack is kind enough to suggest a bunch of builders, and so I'm going to use this. Uh, yep. So what's happening here is don't freak out with like the long list of layers, but it's basically like a bunch of layers that get pulled and actually build a base image from which it will reconstruct like um, the entire set of layers that will produce like the final OCI compliant image that we can then deploy. So we're just sort of waiting for all of this to complete. And um, some of these layers already exist because, you know, we've done some things in the past. And now we get to like the fun part. So what's happening is the build pack is actually trying to go in and detect what language is in use. So we said that we're going to make use of the Node.js build pack. So it created what is known as a deployment plan or a build plan. And then it actually went ahead and completed this build process. So after that, it exports all of these different layers to the Docker daemon. And then finally, my container is ready. Now I'm just going to run this very quickly. Um, okay, and then let's see what happens when it's enabled.
Fingers crossed.
No, I think we have to specify that port number here. So Docker run. Yeah, there you go. So that's the app. So we were
Ah,
able to build this and run it on like a Docker runtime, and that's basically what we wanted to demonstrate. Now, um, of course, I understand that this might not be the
best of ways. Yeah, easiest of ways.
optimal
Yes.
experience that folks are
Expecting.
expecting, but it's an intermediary step, and it's important to understand this step before we go the full route and see how the Cloud Foundry pass simplifies this step and a lot of others as well. So Shedrack, would you be kind enough as to walk us through um, some more apps, and just containerize and deploy them, but in a more magical way, as you like to call it?
Yeah. Yeah, sure, definitely. Um, can you see my screen?
Uh, Not yet. I can now. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, they are like, I mean, you've showed us a very an intermediary way of doing deploying an application in JavaScript application to Cloud Foundry or something. But there is an easy way, I suppose. I mean, there's definitely an easy way to doing these things. So I'm just going to show you real quick how easy it gets. It gets way much more easier than what Ram has just showed. So let me just clear my terminal real quick. So I'm just going to do the same thing Ram did, but this time a much more complex application. It's an exchange application, an exchange rate application built with Node and handlebars, etc. Now, if Ram has showed us the way of the amount of commands that we have to do, the Docker run, etc., the whole thing Ram did, but there's actually an easier way of deploying a Node app. Now, the best part of Cloud Foundry is that one platform rules them all. Like basically, if you want to deploy your static app, whether JavaScript static app, don't necessarily have a Node backend or a backend in general, you can also use Cloud Foundry for that. If you have a full stack application that has both a database that you have to connect to the database or some service or etc., Cloud Foundry can also do that. So unlike Netlify and Vessel that cannot handle full stack applications, they only deploy static content, where you now have to maybe use Netlify for your static content, then go to Heroku to deploy your application backend, whether Node, XS, PHP, etc. Now with Cloud Foundry, you can do every single thing in just one platform. So I'm just going to show you real quick an application. Now this is a very basic application, a basic JavaScript application built with Node and JavaScript basically. We have the lib folder, the node modules, of course, the nodemon, the JSON to handle the server that we're going to be running our application on, the package log, etc. So now, as easy as it gets, I've cloned this repo for my GitHub account, and the only thing I need to do now is to push it to Cloud Foundry, deploy it on Cloud Foundry, and I can do that by just running a single command. Now, you have to have the Cloud Foundry CLI. You have to have the Cloud Foundry CLI installed, and to check that, you can always run CF, and you would see that it brings out a bunch of commands, which is going to show us that, okay, we have Cloud Foundry CF CLI installed. There are like two versions. We have the 6.x and we have the 7.x, depending on which you want to use. The 7 point is the newest version, and the 6 point is the previous version before the 7, but it's still in use. So if I want to deploy this application now, all I need to do is to run cf push, then give my app name. Let's do node change. So I don't node exchange. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so this is just node escape. This is it. This is just the command I need to do to deploy my application on Cloud Foundry. I have logged into the Cloud Foundry CLI. You'll have to do that. So let me just show you to log in to the Cloud Foundry CLI or to your Cloud Foundry account, or any Cloud Foundry cluster you have deployed on maybe Google Cloud, etc. would get to that side very soon. You can just do that, deploy your application by running cf push. And when you run cf push, it does a couple of processes. It goes through a couple of processes, which Ram has sort of explained, but I would be explaining now. If you can see, it says pushing app node exchange to org. So org is where most of our apps have. So we also have a space. The space is called Shedrack, and of course, I'm the admin of that particular space. So it specifies, Cloud Foundry specifies your application into, and your entire company, your entire development team into spaces and organizations. So an organization could be the entire team, while the spaces could be various points your application has to go through. So you could name a space development, you could name a space staging, you could name a space production. So depending on how you want it to be, arranged. I mean, just like Ram said, there's always some sort of error when you are doing demos. So let's see what's wrong. So I just cleared my terminal now so I can focus on what is important. So this is weird. So if I do save push, node exchange, go through the whole process again. Takes a few seconds, and for some packaging files. So it packages the files in the relevant files in the folder that we need to. It uploads it to the server, then connects to the Cloud Foundry API for processing. Then it stages the application and also start generating logs for the application. So it uses buildpacks, like Ram said. We're using the Node.js buildpack. So it uses buildpacks. That in the buildpack spec looks for the npm install, npm start command. Since we're using npm, if you look at this place, this web here, this is the start command for application node server.js or node index.js, depending on what you want. Unlike Docker, or like the Docker the example Ram said, showed if you use node index, if you don't use node index.js, there's going to be some sort of error, or if it doesn't recognize the command. But with this particular demo, it's going to show us that we can actually run any scripts to carry out our starting our application. So it pulls the image, does all the whole configuration. We don't necessarily need to do all those things by ourselves. And it starts the instance. If you can see the name of the app we give, node exchange, the requested state that started the application, the route. Now the route is this unique link for every single application you deploy, where you can see your application live on your browser. So this is where we are going to use to see if application has deployed or not. But since the state is currently started, that means the application has deployed successfully by just a single command. Now we just had to run one single command, which is cf push, the name of the app, inside the root folder of your application, and boom, application has been deployed to Cloud Foundry, and it's live. So let's see it. Let's see if our application actually works on our browser. Now I will have to share my browser screen. Okay, I don't know why it's verifying Keybase all the time. Hold on, give me a second. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yep, keep going.
Okay, now because we're using an IP address, and it's not HTTP, it's not HTTPS, it's not secured. Of course, our browser is going to show an error. You can always add an SSL by yourself. There's also always a way to add an SSL to your application with Cloud Foundry as easy as possible. So if I click on this to proceed to the application, we should see our application deployed live. Fingers crossed. I mean, it's a demo. Things are meant to break, but this won't break. And so this is basically application deployed live, where we can see currency. We can also check out rates of various currency. We can also check historical rates. And yeah, so this is basically a full node application deployed on Cloud Foundry with just a single command. We did not need to do anything special to get this up and running. We just had to do a particular command, which is cf push, the name of the app, and Cloud Foundry recognizes the application for you with build and uses the correct build pack for you to deploy your application live. So this is like as easy as it gets. It's so easy to deploy a full stack node application with just a single command, which I think is wonderful. You don't have to leave your terminal. You don't have to leave your terminal. You don't have to go to any dashboard somewhere. You don't have to push to connect to Git or something. You can deploy your application live from your machine with just a single command as fast as possible. Now, this is I think personally, as a JavaScript developer that do not like stress, I definitely don't like stress, any form of stress. This is heaven. This is basically heaven for me, because I do not need to write any Docker file. I didn't need to go to any dashboard somewhere to deploy my application or push to some other registry. All I just have to do is right from my machine. All I did was to do a CF push to then the application name in my application root folder, and boom, my application is deployed live. I can also add SSL if I want to add to make my application available for everybody, and etc. So this is how easy it is to deploy an application to Cloud Foundry. Now there are several containerization best practices. So now Cloud Foundry actually containerizes our application, our JavaScript application, which that's something I don't know if Facel and Netlify do that, but I strongly doubt they do that. And there are several best practices for containerization that are built right into Cloud Foundry. They do the containerization for you by yourself without you doing any single thing. I mean, you just need to know commands and you're good to go. Thanks to the use of build packs. In this particular project, we are using the Paketo build pack, which is also a project of the Cloud Foundry Foundation. And Now, we would definitely introduce Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes. This is actually deployed on Kubernetes right now. I did not do any single thing. Like, I don't need to know Kubernetes. I'm not strong in Kubernetes. I'm just learning Kubernetes, and I can deploy my application on Kubernetes with just a single command. Now, Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes lets us deploy application on Kubernetes without having so much to do when it comes on the Kubernetes side of things. The Cloud Foundry platform has been built to help you to do the tasking job for you. All you just have to do is run a single command to push your application. Now, the CF4K project, the Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes project, it's personally one of my favorite platform as a service for deploying my apps on Kubernetes. It's open source, clearly. It's open source. The Cloud Foundry Foundation is an open source foundation. So it's open source. You can always contribute, you can raise issues, etc. It's built by the community. It gives you the flexibility to deploy your application on Kubernetes without the technical know-how of being a Kubernetes expert. You don't need to have a CKA or CKAD certification to be able to use Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes. Nah, you don't need that. All you just need to do is to install Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes on any of your platform. It could be on Google Cloud. It could be on Minikube. That is for your local machine. It could be on Minikube. It could be on AWS. It could be on Azure. It could be on basically any platform you really want to deploy, any infrastructure as a service you really want to deploy your application. You can install Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes on it. It's still in version 1, and it's basically still a work in progress, but it's available currently for every single person that wants to try it out to use it. All you have to do is go to cf4kids.io, and from there you would be able to see the respective more information about CF4K. Now, Ram is going to quickly. I mean, all these awesome things Cloud Foundry do is definitely not cannot go. The build packs helping this cannot go unmentioned. So Ram is basically going to tell us more about Paketo, Cloud native build packs, and other CNCF projects. So Ram.
Yeah, can you just quickly switch to your terminal? I'm just going to focus a little bit about what just happened there, and then also try and answer some of the questions that folks have on live chat.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, but not the terminal yet. Yep, I can
Okay.
see it now.
Hold on.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Okay.
Can you just scroll up
Awesome.
very quickly? Scroll up to the part in the terminal that says build, detect, analyze, and that build pack stuff.
Okay. Okay. So we're here. I think it's from here, right? Is this okay, or do I need to scroll down?
Yeah, there's nothing moving on the screen actually.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's fine now. So
Okay.
for folks who were paying attention during the first part of the call, um, this uh, this is the part that sort of repeats itself. So if you look closely, it basically shows the whole exercise that we did with build packs a little before, and it basically shows how the same thing is happening here. All right. So um, Paketo, like I mentioned, is an implementation of the cloud native build pack specification. In this case, we didn't even mention what build packs are required. So Cloud Foundry has the ability to look at the code, look at certain files that are in the workspace, in the current working directory, and then it will just detect a build pack on its own. Now, once detected, it will then select those build packs, and then the Node.js build pack itself is composed of Node Engine, npm install, and npm start, and a few other layers, and it makes use of all of these different build pack layers, build packs to construct the layers of the final container. And then just scroll down once again. Sorry. It will finally export this code in the form of an OCI compatible image, and that image is what gets deployed to Kubernetes. Now, I'm going to quickly share my screen if you don't mind, Shedrack. I just want to show some stuff with pods and things like that. So let me open up um, K9s, and then here you can see all of the different apps that are deployed, and here you can find among the workloads the app that Shedrack just deployed. So uh, this shows all of the different pods that are running, and we can also like get into details and see like what's happening um, inside this particular pod with its containers and everything. um, so let's see, do we have any logs? Nothing. um, I'm going to shift out, and yeah, so some of these require some knowledge of Kubernetes and things like that, but the idea is when you're developing your apps and you want to be able to deploy them, you can deploy them without having to worry about all of this. But somebody um, on the stream mentioned that, but still for debugging nodes pods you need Kate's knowledge, which is very true. But the idea is uh, for the deployment, at least a lot of things are simplified, and in larger organizations we often find that there are dedicated teams for debugging nodes and things like that, and all of these platform operator stuff. But then obviously if you're one of those lucky few in a smaller team, or you tend to do things by yourself, Kubernetes knowledge is kind of something you can't do without. Then there was a question about what cloud provider are you using in Cloud Foundry. So Shedrack did mention a few things about the Cloud Foundry provider. Um, in this case, we are using a um, Google Kubernetes engine that is running on our Google Cloud infrastructure. It is a 3 node cluster, and we have this project called CF for Kates installed on it, which basically provides the Cloud Foundry PaaS interface. So if I do CF anything, it's going to go off to that particular Kubernetes cluster, and it is going to show me all of
Mm-hmm.
the apps that are running there. So right now there's like
Sweet.
two, so you can see that information here. This gives you some idea of my of the endpoint that we're using, and yeah, that's the name of the cluster that we're using and things like that. And so one other question that we have is migrate from Cloud Foundry to Kates. What are the benefits and cost, time, etc.? So um, I don't understand the question in its entirety, but I'm assuming if you migrate from using Cloud
Yeah,
Foundry
same
to
here.
just native Kubernetes, what are the benefits? Um, Sorry to kind of disappoint you there. Our focus is to get folks off of the Kubernetes bandwagon onto Cloud Foundry, but essentially, use Cloud Foundry as the interface to Kubernetes. So it's not about migrating away from Cloud Foundry or away from Kubernetes. From Bosch-based Kubernetes Cloud Foundry, if you
Yeah.
migrate to Kubernetes-based Cloud Foundry, there's obviously a lot of benefits of making use of Kubernetes itself. Um, this particular method that we just demonstrated, which is to take an app and deploy it using CF push and things like that, has more to do with simplifying the experience and getting cost
Yeah.
benefits and time benefits out of that simplification. So, like again, like Shedrack mentioned, a few minutes ago, um, there's really a lot of things that you can accomplish by simplifying deployment to Kubernetes, and this
Yeah.
simplification has a lot of benefits in terms of it takes a lot less time for your developers to get their job done. They can focus on the you know business problems that need to be solved and stuff like that, as opposed to worrying about a lot of the platform operations in general. So those are really the benefits. It reduces and eliminates a lot of the toil that tends to come along with having to deploy your apps to Kubernetes all the time. So
Yeah.
um,
Kubernetes is hard, really hard. Not
yeah,
necessarily, let's just say complex. It's really complex.
it
I
is.
mean, Kelsey was saying, Kelsey Hightower was saying yesterday on the Clubhouse group, he was saying, okay, he knows that Kubernetes, people are actually saying that Kubernetes is no longer hard, it's just complex. I mean, I do not know the difference between hard and complex, but I really, really think that Kubernetes is really hard and complex at the same time.
Right.
I mean, you really need that CK or CKAD certification. Trust me.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, Rama showed us the benefits. Just like you answered the question, the benefits of moving from Kubernetes to Cloud Foundry, which is a lot of benefits. I mean, um, the toiling you have to do to just deploy your a simple application to Kubernetes is a lot compared to Cloud Foundry that has done all those toiling for you, and all you just have to do is just to know certain commands up here in your head. And if you are working in a very big team, of course, there are people that can help you debug, which KNIS for your pods and your nodes, etc. So Cloud Foundry, the aim here is it simplifies that experience, the whole Kubernetes experience. Cloud Foundry brings the CF push experience to Kubernetes. They've done the hard work for you. Yours is just to get your app up and running on with any of the cloud providers, service providers that you basically want to use. If it could be GCP, AWS, Azure, whatever basically suits your company needs. CFOK is basically there for you to use. Um, um, Ram has talked about most of it. Time. I mean, we've been on this stream for an hour now, and it's time to close the curtains. And with these few points of ours, we've been able, I hope we've been able to convince, but not confuse you that you need to move over from Kubernetes to Cloud Foundry for Kubernetes and save yourself a bunch of stress, save yourself a bunch of team, and focus on the business goal and development of your team in general. This applies to enterprise team, applies to individual developers, it also applies to smaller teams. It's Cloud Foundry is available for any demographic in general. Just get your app up and running. And if you also need help, you can always send us a message. I mean, on Slack, we also have a Slack group that you can always join, the Cloud Foundry Slack. Maybe Ram should drop it in the live chats probably. Also, you can follow the Cloud Foundry Twitter accounts and just send a message or at the Cloud Foundry Twitter accounts. We would see your mention and we would reply you if you have any question. I also give you links to where you can find answers to your question. It's been fun doing this, and we hope to do this constantly to try to convince you that why Cloud Foundry is an awesome technology and why you should add Cloud Foundry to your development stack. If you're more of a big fan of your CI/CD, Cloud Foundry caters for that too, and this is something that we're working on. And our next stream will definitely be talking about something relating to CI/CD, especially with GitLab and GitHub. If you want to add Cloud Foundry to your entire pipeline, we also are going to cater for that. So yeah, so that's basically the Cloud Foundry is an awesome technology in summary. In summary, everything we've done is Cloud Foundry is awesome. You should add Cloud Foundry to your deployment pipeline and see how well and how fast you'll be able to get things done as fast as possible. Ram, any closing statements from you?
Goodbye, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, in whichever part of the world that you're joining us from.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
thank you for your time. Obviously, this recording is available on our YouTube channel whenever you want to see it, or if you want to share it later. Yeah, you can reach out to us on all different social media channels and on Slack with any questions at any time. Happy to help you get on board. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, and also if you need to see more videos on doing language specific stuff on Cloud Foundry, you can check out Cloud Foundry channel, YouTube channel. We have videos on Go, PHP, Python, JavaScript, Gatsby, static sites. Basically, you can deploy anything on Cloud Foundry. We have it catered for already. And if you are more of a reader, you can check our Medium page, medium.com/Cloud Foundry Foundation, and you would find most of the work we've put out. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. It's been fun doing this. We hope to do this constantly and going forward. So thank you so much and have a nice evening, morning, and afternoon, wherever you may be in the world.